thunderstorm can be a terrifying event, perhaps touching something beneath the surface of consciousness. Even today, science does not understand lightning's cause. But with new technology, we can now observe lightning in slow motion. We can fly directly into thunderstorms. And we can observe electrical events from space, seeing lightning as it has never been seen before. For years, we ignored direct human testimony about exotic forms of lightning. When airline pilots reported electrical discharges launched into space above the thunderclouds, scientists dismissed these reports. But now we know that blue jets and red sprites are real. Only recently did we begin to appreciate the electrical circuitry of our planet. By firing into space, blue jets, red sprites, and their exotic companions reveal a direct electrical connection to a much larger environment through which Earth itself moves. Our planet responds to surrounding space as a charged body would respond to regions of different charge. Auroral displays, for example, are now known to connect directly to the electrical domain of the Sun. Most scientists dismissed this connection until it was proven by space-age findings. Meteorologists and atmospheric physicists were astonished to discover a flow of charged particles moving along magnetic field lines from the Sun and entering Earth's upper atmosphere to light the auroras. The Earth-Sun connection means that space is not electrically neutral, as astronomers, cosmologists, and planetary scientists had so long supposed. But there is more to discover. Electrical events today cannot compare to events in more ancient times. Every early culture looked back in terror to the flash of a heaven-shaking thunderbolt. This great weapon of the gods never looks like the lightning we know. Never. Often the mythic thunderbolt is depicted acting in one direction only. But even more often, the images accent a bipolar form, an unexplained curiosity. But today, this mystifying weapon, the thunderbolt of the gods, is recognized in laboratory experiments with high-energy electrical discharge. And its bipolar form is seen in space as typified by the dynamic electrical structure of nebulas. The result is that the picture of planetary history has changed. The divine weapon, both celebrated and feared throughout the ancient world, now connects ancient mythology and symbolism to the most far-reaching discoveries in space. And one conclusion rises above all others. Just a few thousand years ago, cosmic events transformed our sky, forever altering human consciousness and cultural history. Hello, I'm David Talbot, and this is the second episode in the series, Symbols of an Alien Sky. Is it possible to reconstruct the cosmic events of ancient times? It is possible if we allow the witnesses themselves to speak in their own language of myths and symbols. That's how we bring to light the points of agreement between the different cultures. We expose the substructure of human memories around the world. In episode 1, we considered several of these mythic archetypes. A primeval sun god whom the first astronomers mysteriously identified as the planet Saturn. A mother goddess said to be the planet Venus. A cosmic warrior named as the planet Mars. A fiery serpent or dragon attacking the world. And a cosmic mountain rising to the center of heaven. For millennia, we've tried to understand the archetypes based on the world as we know it. Despite our best efforts, every archetype remains an enigma today. Around the world, ancient cultures invoked a great wheel of heaven. They carved the wheel on stone, repeated endless stories about it, and celebrated it in magical rites. The power of this archetype has never been explained. But if we see the ancient world through the eyes of our early ancestors, we discover that the archetypes are descriptions of formations they saw in the sky and stories about what happened to these forms. The archetypes seem enigmatic only because those events are not occurring now. Our purpose here is to reconstruct the events that inspired the archetypes. When the great civilizations first appeared, the world was a much different place. How are we to understand the celestial events acting on human consciousness? The terrestrial sky today can't serve as a guide because the positions of planets, Earth included, have changed. But if we work only with the archetypes, consistent global testimony, a reliable picture does emerge. On the face of it, the picture is preposterous, unbelievable. But unbelievable only until the definitive evidence lies before us. A few thousand years ago, a gathering of planets filled the heavens close to Earth. In their electrical interactions, they produced immense discharge configurations in the sky. When these events occurred, our ancestors did not know what a planet is. They simply saw gods in the sky. And when the gods went to war, their most feared weapon was the cosmic thunderbolt. We see this thunderbolt in the hands of innumerable warrior gods and world-saving heroes. Early astronomical traditions held that the cosmic thunderbolt was a stream of fire between planets. Evidence for intense electrical activity in the ancient sky leads us directly to new discoveries in space. And from there to a surprising scientific confirmation of the reconstruction offered here. The sky above our early ancestors poses a deep enigma. Planets close to the Earth. Electrical discharge formations between planets. And as we'll show in this episode, the extraordinary forms taken by the cosmic thunderbolt. How do we deal with the glaring contradiction between things taken for granted in the sciences today and our own reconstruction of planetary formations and high-energy electrical events in the ancient sky? Throughout the 20th century, it seems that textbook astronomy staked everything on a universe driven by gravity alone. No interest in electrical phenomena. But then came the great surprises of the space age. In every direction we look, we see a tapestry of high-energy events, magnetic fields, and fine filamentary structure, all pointing to pervasive electric currents. And make no mistake about it, the magnetic universe is now acknowledged by astronomers. Only electricity can create magnetic fields. Only electricity can sustain magnetic fields in the vacuum of space. In our own investigation, a critical turn came in late 1996. That was when the Australian physicist Wallace Thornhill convinced me that planetary formations I'd reconstructed from ancient testimony alone were fundamentally electrical. The gathered planets were the anodes and the cathodes, the positively and negatively charged bodies in electric discharge formations. I could then see that not just ancient events challenge popular theories today. Discovery by discovery, one surprise at a time, the space age is moving all of science closer to an understanding of the electric universe. The universe is an ocean of charged particles, plasma, where the raw electric force can be incomparably more powerful than gravity. From this perspective, there's no better news than the new telescopes detecting events across the entire electromagnetic spectrum. As we've seen beyond visible light alone, the universe has come alive with electromagnetic activity, from infrared and radio waves at the lower end of the spectrum to X-rays and gamma rays at the higher end. When radio telescopes began to peer into the core of the Milky Way, astronomers were stunned by its high-energy arcs, threads, and filaments. Then radio telescopes began to reveal galaxies immersed in high-energy electromagnetic activity. How does this surrounding activity affect the evolving structure of the seemingly tiny galaxy held in its grasp? In every direction we look, we see a tapestry of high-energy events, magnetic fields, and fine filamentary structure, all pointing to pervasive electric currents. It is electric currents across immense distances that will explain what gravity alone could never explain. Here was the best view of the galaxy M87 in 1990, but once we began to see inside the galactic glow, the view exposed an axial jet spanning thousands of light years, which means thousands of trillions of miles. What has excited these rarefied particles and accelerated them to stupendous energy levels while holding the particles in a narrow jet across unfathomable distances? The energies are so high that the electromagnetic emissions include something called synchrotron radiation, the most energetic form of radiation known to science. Synchrotron radiation was discovered first in the laboratory by engineers working with particle accelerators to accelerate electrons to nearly the speed of light, while using intense magnetic fields to force these charged particles into a spiraling motion. The effect of such motion is radiation across the entire electromagnetic spectrum. Synchrotron radiation in space means an electric universe. Closer to home in our own galaxy, new telescopes have exposed spectacular nebulas and stellar displays exhibiting all of the extreme energies and fine structures expected of electric discharge in space plasma. Towering plasma columns, bipolar discharge, plasma toruses, radial discharge, and giant wheels turning on axial jets in space. This was the view of the Crab Nebula in the 1980s. Then, with Hubble and its many complements, an explosion of energetic detail greeted astronomers, and at its core a churning engine familiar only to electrical engineers, emitting everything from X-rays to radio waves, a confirmation of synchrotron radiation. Yes, the picture of space has changed, but follow the trail of surprises. Observe how astronomers struggled with things they weren't trained to recognize. But most were well trained as mathematicians, of course. So when gravity began to fail them, abstract mathematical solutions were their first recourse. Black holes, dark matter, dark energy, neutron stars. A good illustration of the point is the now famous graph in which normal matter is only 4% of the mathematician's universe. The remaining 96%, dark matter and dark energy, is invisible at any and all wavelengths, outside the reach of mortals, but elegantly preserving the sovereignty of gravity. Whatever you may think of these concepts scientifically, within the culture of science, as a matter of historical record, they became cover stories for the failure of gravitational theory. It seems that astronomers paid too little attention to the pioneers in the study of electricity and charged particle behavior. Experimental work by Nikola Tesla, the first to demonstrate alternating current, changed the world. But astronomers didn't hear his warning. Today's scientists have substituted mathematics for experiments, and they wander off through equation after equation and eventually build a structure which has no relation to reality. The Norwegian experimentalist Christian Birkeland was the first to identify charged particles from the sun as the cause of the auroras. He wrote, "It seems to be a natural consequence of our points of view to assume that the whole of space is filled with electrons and flying electric ions of all kinds." And Nobel laureate Hannes Alfvén, the acknowledged father of plasma science, became a towering critic of directions in mathematical astronomy. Students using astrophysical textbooks remain essentially ignorant of even the existence of plasma concepts, despite the fact that some of them have been known for half a century. Particularly noteworthy today is the work of Alfvén's close colleague, plasma scientist Anthony Peratt. It was Peratt's supercomputer simulation that showed how twin currents, now called Birkeland currents, interact to form spiral galaxies, no dark matter needed. Also, we'll take up Peratt's most recent work, a massive scientific investigation of rock art the world over, all confirming high-energy plasma configurations in the sky. Our goal is to understand celestial events once remembered around the world, and this will require an interdisciplinary approach. We'll respect all data returned by space probes and new telescopes. We'll respect more than a century of groundbreaking research on electricity in space. And we'll respect the archetypes, the global patterns of cultural memory in ancient times. It will be the convergence of evidence that throws a new light on our own past. And amongst the best witnesses will be our planetary neighbors, Their surfaces will speak volumes for electrical events and cosmic upheaval in the not-so-distant past.